Welcome to another edition of Beyond the Game, presented by TV Sports. I'm your host, Steve Hayes, and today our guest is Director of the NCAA, Rick Nixon. Mr. Nixon, how are you doing today?
Steve, doing great. Thanks for having me.
Man, I appreciate you, man. I definitely thank you for taking the time out. So I just wanted to talk to you. I reached out to you because I just found it interesting, actually, that how quickly you responded. But I was looking over some things, and I see you've been with the NCAA since 2006, correct?
Yeah, I've been there since 2006. Kind of had a few different stops before then, but I joined in 2006. Been there ever since, and I've really enjoyed my time in Indianapolis.
And talk to me before your time at before you got to the NCAA. How did it come about? Where did it all start for you?
Oh yeah, for me, I'm a native of San Antonio, Texas. Born and raised. I went to Trinity University here, which is a Division III school here in San Antonio. And then when I got out of school, I wasn't sure which path I wanted to take. My degree was in journalism, broadcasting, and film, so I kind of covered all the bases. I always thought I'd get into maybe a career in radio or TV possibly, but I went to work for an advertising agency right out of school. Did that for about 5 years. It was kind of I always equate that to my master's degree and kind of learning all the different phases of kind of trying to figure out what I wanted to do generally. At the end of the day, so I did a little bit of public relations. I did a little bit of writing, copywriting. I did some ad agency work. Then on the side, I also did, I freelanced for the Associated Press, United Press International back in the day, Sports Ticker. I would cover all the Spurs games, all the boxing matches that came through San Antonio. I'd cover, soccer and a variety of other sports. I kind of did everything, and it really, I kind of set the stage for where I am today, being able to do all those different things. I covered over 20 years of Spurs, from their rise from before David Robinson all the way through, Tim Duncan championships and all that. So it was a very interesting time to see all the, different Lakers teams come through and Celtics and all that. But it was just kind of fun to, cover that, get into the locker rooms, kind of see what that was all about. And during that time, my dad got into sports information at Trinity University, so I helped him out a little bit on the side as well. So when a job opened up at the University of Texas San Antonio in sports information, I applied for that. I had a little bit of background with, working local sports events and then having a little bit of time in sports information. I got the job at UTSA, and next thing I look up, and 20 years later, I'm still at UTSA. But during that time, we NCAA started bringing events to the Alamo Dome. We had the men's Final Four, women's Final Four. We had the Division I women's volleyball championship come. So I met a lot of people at the NCAA during those, when I was host media coordinator working at UTSA. So that kind of opened the door to discussions when they had a job open up in 2006. I joined the NCAA as associate director in charge of media relations for the Division I women's basketball championship and the women's Final Four. So in 2006, I picked up after living my whole life in San Antonio, moved to Indianapolis, and have been there ever since. Since that time in Indianapolis, we've transitioned a little bit. I worked for almost 6 years and just doing women's basketball media relations. And then they kind of reorganized our media relations department. And now I do several sports. I do Division I women's basketball still. I do Division I men's golf as well as media coordinator. I've done a variety of other championships, lacrosse, field hockey, and a few others. So you kind of do a few more things than I used to, even though Division I women's basketball has been my primary lift here for now 15 years. So it's been great.
And what do you find most exciting about being in that driver's seat for the women's division of NCAA?
Yeah, I really take it. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I really take it personal in trying to really promote Division I women's basketball. I've seen the growth from the time I arrived in 2006 to where it is today, and I always feel a personal involvement in trying to make that product better, trying to get it promoted, trying to make it where people are talking women's basketball when they're talking basketball, because we think we have a great game, we have a great championship. We've had some terrific moments during my time there. We've had buzzer beaters and overtime games in the Final Fours. We've had some great championships, and I really think there's it continues to grow, and I always feel that's part of my charge to make sure that continues, that momentum continues, that people talk women's basketball. I know this year's a little bit hard for everybody in a variety of spectrums, but still trying to keep that momentum going. We've seen great growth on TV. ESPN does a great job with our championship. So just trying to make sure that that momentum keeps going, that women's basketball is all it can be. I continue to do a variety of articles like for NCAA.com. I do, team of the week, starting five. I'm always reaching out to SIDs at our membership institutions, trying to get them to talk storylines about, every program has 5 or 6 great stories to talk about. So trying to get them to really, promote their programs, get it out there, and, talking women's basketball as much as we can leading into the championship, which we hope culminates another great year, again this year.
And you touched on it earlier. Obviously, it's a different year for all of us. What was it like? Could you take me a little bit behind the scenes of how you guys were able to come together and say, okay, we're going to have a season this year? Because for every sport, whether it was college, high school, or professional, was up in the air. So how difficult was it for you guys to go through this process and to finally come together and find a plan that works for you guys to have a season?
Oh yeah, no, it's been an interesting 9-10 months now, but basically it started back in March. We were on that Thursday, you may remember, when all chaos started to break loose. The Rudy Gobert happened, I think, on that Wednesday. Thursday was our start of our selection process day. So that was the day we would get, typically sequestered and go in with our committee, start talking teams for selections, leading into what we hope would be selection Monday. But that was that Thursday that everything started breaking loose and all the conference tournaments started getting canceled, and we had to make adjustments. So that was way back on, I think it was like March the 12th, if I remember correctly. So then, we had to start thinking through, so this means we're not going to even have a championship. And so even starting there of trying to figure out where we were last year, and then trying to figure out what makes sense for this year. I mean, quite honestly, when I haven't been, I've been working remotely since March 12th, which is bizarre. If you would have told me back then that I'd be out a week, much less, 10 months, I probably wouldn't have believed you. It just didn't feel like it was real. But so we've had to adjust. We've had to do a variety of different things, not only to close out last season, but then to try to make this season all, the best it can be. It's been a work in progress, as you know. I mean, you've been, monitoring what's happened in football and trying to make sure basketball can be what it can be. One thing I always try to stress is that it's up to the member institutions of how the regular season looks like. From an NCAA standpoint, we deal with what the championship's going to look like come, March and April. But by the same token, you have to have a season that leads into that. And we've been, you really tried to, if you've seen so much legislation and things comes down to where, we used to say you have to have a certain number of, over 26, 27 games, to qualify during the regular season. Now that's a 13-game schedule that we're trying to get each of our member institutions to play. And even that is a challenge for some of them. You may have seen like the Ivy League, not even playing, sports this year.
Yes.
And that's one of our 32 member conferences in Division I. So just things like that are happening, and you're having to adjust on the fly. Our committee is really doing a great job at just kind of trying to stay ahead of the game and trying to figure out, what may be out there that they have to deal with this year. It's not going to be a normal year. We certainly realize that, some, teams are going to have 20 games, teams are going to have 25 games, other teams are going to have barely be able to get 13. So you're going to have to be able to look at these teams and judge them based on what their seasons have been to see if they are championship worthy or if they should be part of our 64 team championship field. So it's going to be, I mean, it is a challenge. The committee realizes that, and really so many things have been put in place to make sure that that the public, the membership, our fans know that we will take a look at what the season is this year. It's nothing like we've ever seen before, but we just going to make the best of it. We're still, our charge is to get our conference automatic qualifiers, which will be 31 this year instead of 32, and then to fill out the rest of the at-large field with the best teams in the country. So trying to get a feel, even if you played 13 games versus a team that's played 22. Have you had some key wins? What are some of those other matchups maybe that were head-to-head against teams that you're being compared to? But having all those data points for our committee so that they can make an educated decision come March. We're still planning. Everything is in lockstep right now that we'll be having a championship. It should be exciting. The one thing we did announce last week is that the entire championship will be played in one geographic region. So we're trying to minimize the impact of travel. We're trying to make it to where we can get those games in. But we'll be in one region. We're looking at San Antonio, ironically enough, as a site for that. So it's come full circle for me being back, possibly in my hometown. As we get things organized. But we're looking at right now to see what that's going to be. It could be, around our same time schedule we've had in the past, late March, early April. We were set to play the Final Four on April 2nd and 4th at the Alamo Dome. We think that's still going to hold true, but trying to build what does the rest of that championship look like? We're definitely having to be nimble, be on our toes, and make sure that we could pull it off and make it as good a student athlete experience as they're expected to experience. So, we think we could do it, and we're excited about the season so far. And quite honestly, I mean, there's been cancellations, but there's been great basketball too. So we're kind of encouraged by what we've seen so far here in early December. That teams are starting to get games in and starting to get a feel for who are our best teams. And this year, it's definitely an open slate with a lot of graduations and things from last year. So just kind of looking at what that's starting to be. But once we turn the calendar to January, we'll really start getting into the meat of it. And I think we're all excited about that as well.
And it's like you said, it has been an amazing year of basketball so far. And I'm hoping that you guys will be able to finish things out. I wanted, if you could, to take me back to your mindset. I believe it was 1999 when the NBA had the lockout and the San Antonio Spurs won the championship. Yeah. What does that come? I mean, obviously it was a lockout. Nobody saw that coming, but you were a part of that. You witnessed that, and now you're witnessing the situation of a pandemic and no fans and everything. Do you remember how you felt then in '99? And can you kind of compare that to what you're feeling now? Obviously, like I said, different because of a pandemic, but still a shutdown of sports. Do you recall how you felt when that happened in the NBA?
And you know how it always is. I mean, you have your traditional seasons. You always think like in the NBA, they got to play 82 games, and Major League Baseball, I think they have 156. And you always felt like, I think back then you always felt like if you didn't get that, you're maybe shortchanging the fans, and maybe it wasn't a true season. I remember in '99, I think it was, that the Spurs, I remember that them winning it, and I think Phil Jackson called it an asterisk championship back in the day, and it always upset everybody here in San Antonio. But now as I look back at that, it's almost it's almost even more difficult. And just watching this past, like the NBA season and baseball, the Lakers, Dodgers, what they had to go through, the bubble situation in the NBA, and then having to play a bizarre baseball season. You end up playing all your games in Arlington, Texas, to win a championship for Los Angeles. I just those bizarre situations. I think it kind of proved, as I look back, how maybe it was worth more during that time to be able to come together. I don't remember in that NBA season if they played an extra round of playoffs. They may have included additional teams. I don't remember that being the case. It may not.
I believe the first round, I believe it was shortened.
Oh, shortened. Okay, so
yeah, I believe it was shortened.
Those things I think actually make it harder in a way versus easier. So I think those teams that actually can persevere, and I look back at the Spurs back in the day to be able to overcome that lockout situation to still win the championship. I mean, they were a great team, and that was just kind of the start of their run. But I think as I look back now, it probably means more that they were able to overcome that, still win the championship. It kind of reminded me of what we're going through now. And even the teams that are going to emerge, hopefully in this upcoming basketball championship, both men's and women's, those teams that emerge out of that are going to be the teams that are able to be nimble, to be able to flow with the different changes. I mean, you're on an airplane going to a game and they're canceling games, things like that. Being able to overcome that mentally says a lot about those teams, and you kind of have a deeper appreciation for overcoming that. And I think that the team standing at the end, both in the men's and women's championships, will be, to me, they should be even that much more proud, because it's going to be a lot to overcome to get to that final destination.
And absolutely. And one of the biggest things is mental toughness. To, like you said, you could be on a plane and you find out when you land that the game is canceled, and it's just a constant build up and tear down situation. And you have to mentally be prepared for it, because it's a year of uncertainty. I always say it's a year of uncertainty. How were you, Mr. Nixon, personally able to endure and hold up during this pandemic?
Really just trying to adjust. I've always, I've been in the business a long time, but just being able to adjust and try to do everything you can do, from your home or wherever you're going to be, traveling at that particular juncture. I think it's taught us a lot of how to, really adjust on the fly, how to make the best of maybe not a great situation, and really kind of think outside the box, if you will, because at the NCAA for a long time, probably our reputation is that we're pretty stringent, within the rules. But I think we've been very, as you look at kind of all the different legislative pieces, adding fifth-year eligibility to those student athletes that, came back for another year. I mean, they're putting themselves out there. I mean, for us to, we've been really nimble that way, and I think we've really done a really good job. And I think it's taught, me specifically about just being able to adjust and try to make the best of maybe not 100% situation, but make it what it can be. I think we all want sports to continue and to thrive. I think that's been the hard part, is just kind of, not even having a championship last year, just seeing, having no fans, having really nothing on TV for that long block of time. And it feels so good just to have it come back. And it really makes you appreciate what we have and to try to make it everything it can be, going forward. To me, it really, pointed out the value of what we do in this business.
Now, this might be a question that you might not be able to answer off the rip, but do you see a situation where obviously what we're dealing with, and Zoom has become obviously one of the most popular things. Do you see a situation where the NCAA will allow like on-site media and virtual media going forward?
Yeah, I really think and that's really our plan for this coming championship, is that we will have both. I think we've seen the value, and that's kind of another learning lesson is even you look at like the WNBA and other entities that pursued and really persevered through the pandemic, the early parts of the pandemic. The virtual interviews, the things that they've been able to do. I mean, the WNBA, and you talk to their people, the virtual interviews they've had, I think 3 times the media that would normally cover a news conference have been able to be involved from all parts of the country, internationally. It's really opened the door to other possibilities that they didn't even pursue, but it's kind of forced us and them to get into those positions to be able to provide everything virtually. We're going to do all news conferences, virtually. In addition, we'll have probably a small amount of media there on site, but we're really working through that right now, what that should look like. We're coming up it's called the Return to Championships document that we're working on. It's a very comprehensive piece that will kind of show how we want to do things, back of stage, as well as with the teams, to keep everybody safe, but also to allow media to do their job. So it's going to be an important part of what we have coming up after the first of the year.
And you spoke on it earlier at the top of the show. You went through all phases of this to become who you are today and to get where you are today. What are some of the words of encouragement that you can leave to the youth, or just anybody inspiring to be that next doctor, lawyer, basketball player? What are some words of encouragement that you could give to keep people going and motivated?
Oh, absolutely. I think just being able to do a variety of different things. Don't. I mean, to me, in my career, it's been don't pigeonhole yourself into doing one thing. I think if you have a chance to be very versatile, I think in today's world, you really got to be able to, just on the fly. You got to have a good social media presence. You got to be able to, still write. I think it's one of the things I think, some of the youth and others maybe have forgotten a little bit about. Being a good writer is still, an essential part of being, a communicator. You got to be able to write as well as to be able to do the quick, 10-second soundbite. You've got to be able to write, whether it's an email, whether it's a feature story. It doesn't have to be both, but be able to have that certain, being able to be an effective communicator, I think, is key. I think that will go across all spectrums, whether you're in sports, media, or if you're a doctor or a lawyer. Being able to communicate effectively, both via email, or otherwise, I think is going to be a key. You got to be able to, get your message out there, be able to effectively provide that, and then really be thinking through, what are some most key things I need to get out there each time I, get in front of a camera or I get in front of my computer and I'm writing something. You're representing yourself, and hopefully, the more skilled you are, the more versatile you are, the more communication skills you have, the better off you'll be.
And one last thing, obviously, with you being so heavily involved with the women's basketball and NCAA, one of the things that we know is the late Kobe Bryant was aiming towards was to bring more of a presence to the women's NCAA and WNBA. And just talk to me about what that meant to you, obviously, as he was going through that. And he was on a path to strive hard to make sure that it got the notoriety that it deserved. And just as the same level as the men. So what did that mean to you as you saw that?
Yeah, I mean, it was great to see him. And I've always personally, and I know it's strange living in San Antonio, but I've always been a Lakers fan. So to have Kobe, when I was growing up, the Spurs weren't even here when I was younger.
Right,
so
right.
I'm dating myself a little bit, but but Kobe's always one of my favorite players. And then to see him, have his daughters coming up, and Gianna was such a up and coming. It looked like she had great potential to be a superstar player amongst a great person. And Kobe and Gianna and his wife, they were with us in Columbus in 2018 for the women's Final Four. To see them, sitting courtside, to be able to, he went backstage and was with the teams in Columbus. He was with UConn. He also, I think, dropped in to say hi to Sabrina. Ionescu in Oregon. It meant a lot. I mean, you could just see the presence that he had in the building. It brought a great cachet to the women's game for him to kind of put his stamp on it. I mean, for him, I think he loved the women's game, and that really, you could feel that. And for him to have his daughter there, and it really kind of felt like the next generation was up and coming. So when he had the unfortunate accident, I mean, it was devastating. I mean, it was devastating to the whole basketball community, but I don't think people understood what that meant to the women's basketball community specifically, is because, we had this window, you could just see it coming. It was going to be,
Yes.
20, maybe another 20 years of Kobe being involved in the women's game in some capacity. If his daughter, went to college and then played at WNBA, you never know. I mean, you just never know what would happen. But to have him involved in the game brought cachet to what we were trying to do. And I think we all felt it too. It was a great sadness around women's basketball when that took place. It was, and then seeing Sabrina at the memorial service at the Staples Center, the way she eloquently described her relationship with Kobe. I mean, that meant a lot. I mean, to have women's basketball included in that conversation was important, and I was glad they were able to do that. It really showed, how he was a basketball ambassador, whether it was men's or women's or college, professional, and it was a big loss for the entire basketball world, but especially it hurt women's hoops quite a bit.
Mr. Nixon, I truly thank you for those words, and I truly thank you for your time. I'm really wishing you and the NCAA the best. I hope you guys can finish out the season, because you guys are doing an amazing job of taking the proper precautions and keeping the media involved, keeping everybody up to date of what is going on. And one of the things you said that I love is the flexibility that you guys were able to come together on, allowing that 5th year eligibility and everything like that. So once the season is over, I would love to have you back if you're available.
Oh yeah, I'd love to do it, and fingers crossed for a great year. But we're excited. I mean, that's the thing. We're all going to get through this, and it's going to be hopefully a great championship. We'll be able to celebrate come in the first week of April.
Absolutely. This is Beyond the Game. I'm Stephen Hayes, Mr. Rick Nixon. Thank you.
Thanks, Stephen. Thanks for having me.